What an amazing night we've got going here on a Saturday night, watching Michigan and Washington, a rematch of the national championship. But we're going to call a slight audible. We're going to talk about Washington and Michigan today, but a development going on as we speak. Minnesota and 11th ranked USC, a live version of Locked On Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten, live on a Saturday. Glad you could be with us Saturday night going into a Sunday morning here. What an amazing day around the Big Ten, week 6 around college football. It's been fantastic. Of course, I'm Craig Sheeman, by the way, going to introduce myself on a crazy night. We'll get to all the details in just a second. Coming up on 40 years as a sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day during the week. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 of bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Wolverines and Huskies, we got you covered. But we are going to talk Gophers and Trojans. Plus, we'll have our first look at week 7 in just a minute. So, it's been a tight game all night long in Minnesota. The 11th ranked USC Trojans came into Minnesota back and forth. And we'll get you caught up with what has just taken place out there. This game was tied at 10 at the half. Miller Moss off to a slow start. And we told you when we previewed this game earlier this week, we thought it might be a tight game because both teams have played Michigan in the last 2 weeks and both have lost in Ann Arbor by 3 points. Thought there was a chance that this would be a close game. USC came out in the second half, and about 6 minutes to go in the third quarter, they scored a touchdown to make it 17-10. Woody Marks punched it in for a 1-yard touchdown. But then USC's Miller Moss was intercepted by Devin Williams, and then Minnesota scored a touchdown to tie it. Max Brosmer with a 5-yard run. That was 7 minutes to go in the game. So this game was tied at 17 late in the fourth quarter at Minnesota. Now, there were some situations. Minnesota started marching the ball down to the end toward the goal line for what would be maybe presumably a game-winning score, right? They had a 3rd and goal. Darius Taylor thought he got in, didn't. Replay. They took a long time to look at replay, called him short with 58 seconds to go. So PJ Fleck with a humongous decision here. Do you kick a field goal? You're right. You were this close. Or do you punch it in for the touchdown and really make it tough on the Trojans, who would get the ball back with about a minute to go? Well, he decided to go for it. It was called short. They did a tush push on Max Brosmer into the end zone. The official said he was short on 4th down USC ball, 1st and 10 on the 1-inch line. Blown opportunity, right? Well, PJ Fleck was going nuts. They reviewed it and they reversed it. They gave Minnesota the touchdown. They're up 24-17. They made the extra point. USC got the ball back with about 56 seconds to go. They've got the ball right now with about 29 seconds to go on a 2nd and 10 situation. So as soon as that goes final, we will let you know. But an exciting night here. Big Ten action. Another incomplete pass by Miller Moss. It's now 3rd down and 10. All right, to the other game. The game that we all were just watching on NBC Big Ten Saturday night. Washington wins over Michigan in a rematch of the national championship game, 27-17. That was the final score. It was a pretty good ball game. It was closer than that for much of it. Couple of lead changes in here to get to as well. Now, Washington had the first opportunity to score in this game. And Grady Gross, their kicker, you talk about a slump. Last week at Rutgers, he missed 3 field goals, including what would have been the game-tying field goal at the end. And then he comes out here in this game against Michigan, and he misses a 41-yard field goal. So, and that was, all part of an early drive. Washington did get the ball back again and put together a 13-play drive, 83 yards. Giles Jackson had a 39-yard catch on that drive. And then Will Rogers ended up finding Denzel Boston, the great receiver for the Huskies, on a 3-yard touchdown. So Washington did take a 7-0 lead. Should have been 10-0 at this point, but 7-0 with 2:38 to go in the first quarter. Miller Moss intercepted in the end zone with 9 seconds to go. Looks like the Gophers are going to win this game. PJ Fleck is getting mobbed on the sideline. It looks like the Gophers will win 24-17. All right, back to this is what's going on. This is when you're live, man. This is as good as it gets. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On Big Ten Live. All right, so Washington is up 7-0 on Michigan. Then they put together a quick 4-play, 74-yard drive. Desmond Williams Jr., a 37-yard pass to Cameron Davis. He came in for a little change of pace quarterback. More on him later on as well. Got a 37-yard pass play to the Michigan 16-yard line. Then Will Rogers comes back in, passes to Giles Jackson for a 16-yard touchdown. And that was with 9:38 to go in the half. Washington is now up on Michigan 14-0. Now, you and I know Michigan is not built to come from behind by multiple scores. They're not. With Alex Orji at quarterback, they like to have a lead and run the ball and play defense. So Michigan is in trouble at this point. So Michigan makes a change at quarterback. No, they don't go to Davis Warren, who started the first 3 games of the year. They go to Jack Tuttle, who I have suggested he should be playing about 3 weeks back. You can find a podcast we featured on him. He had been injured. They were taking their time bringing him back, and he came in and immediately gave the Wolverines a spark, and so did Donovan Edwards, by the way. Now, Donovan Edwards, you may remember, particularly if you are a Washington fan from the national championship. You know, it was Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. Michigan had a 2-headed running attack, but it was Donovan Edwards who kind of was in Blake Corum's shadow all season long. Made 2 huge plays, big long touchdown runs in the national championship, 41 and 49 yards, if I remember correctly. Well, he comes in there. He must love playing Washington because he ended up scoring on a big touchdown play, 39-yarder, capping off a 7-play, 75-yard drive. And now all of a sudden, Michigan's back in this game. They're down 14-7. Washington's Jed Fish, I thought, questionable clock management at the end of the first half. They ended up settling for a field goal attempt. But as I mentioned earlier, Grady Gross in a kicking slump. This is only a 28-yard chippy, real easy. Michigan blocked it. They blocked it. So the slump continued. They go into the locker room. Michigan had settled for a field goal just a minute before, so 2 scoring drives by Jack Tuttle. So it's 14-10 going into the locker room at halftime. Michigan's back in this ball game. We come out into the second half, and Michigan puts together an 11-play, 75-yard drive. There was a 3rd and 10 where Tuttle just fired it over the middle to Amorion Walker for a first down to the Washington 40. I mention that because those kind of plays have been missing for Michigan, and the quarterback play, it just hasn't been there with a passing attack. So they're rolling. Tuttle's getting warmed up, and he completed to Colston Loveland for a 6-yard touchdown pass, and Michigan takes its first lead of the game, 17-14, 8:38 to go in the third quarter. Washington mixes things up at quarterback too. Desmond Williams comes back in, and he stays in for a while at quarterback. They're driving the ball. There was one play as he's driving on the right side. They're threatening to score, and Jair Hill for Michigan just pancaked him on the sideline, and Williams' feet were still in bounds, so it was a legal hit. We see a lot of times that'll be a penalty flag, but it wasn't, so he gets the sack right at the 10-yard line, and that was the last play of the third quarter. Starting off the fourth quarter, Will Rogers back in a quarterback for Washington. He gets sacked by everybody. The whole Michigan football team just broke through and sacked him. And Mason Graham leading the way there. So now you got to sit here and you're Washington and you're like, all right, are we going to settle for a field goal? Grady Gross has been missing field goals. It's a 29-yarder. We're early in the fourth quarter. If we get a field goal, we get the lead. He kicked it. He made it. Sigh of relief and kind of a standing ovation there at Washington. And Washington is tied. Tied at this point, not for the lead. So it's 17-17, 13:38 to go. Washington's moving the ball. 10 minutes to go. Wink Martindale mixing things up defensively for Michigan, puts in 3 defensive tackles up there, some pressure on Will Rogers. He gets intercepted by Ernest Hausman, and it was the first interception of the year for Rogers. So now Michigan's got all the momentum in this game. But then on that next drive, Tuttle fumbles the ball for Michigan. He was scrambling. He lost the ball. Now, keep in mind, he hadn't played in forever. He's not used to getting hits. Didn't get that ball tucked away. Fumbled the ball. Washington recovers it with 8 minutes to go at the Michigan 32-yard line. Then it was the Jonah Coleman show. We talk about Jonah Coleman all the time on this podcast. He was 4 yards up the middle here and there, and he they just kept going to him. He had the big 27-yard run down the right side, down to the Michigan 5-yard line. Then a 1-yard run. The Michigan calls timeout. There's 6:40 to go. Jonah Coleman, this was a weird part. Jonah Coleman scores what we think is a 4-yard touchdown, just muscling it through right into the teeth of the Michigan defense. With 6:31 to go, they kick the extra point. We go to commercial. Washington's up by a touchdown, and then we find out, wait a minute, game's still tied. What happened? Instant replay. The Big Ten offices said they whistled down before the extra point, which would have made it official and unreviewable. They said they wanted to look at whether Coleman got into the end zone. At live TV, I didn't think he got in. Turns out it was right. Instant replay said the knee was down. He was short, but it didn't matter because then he scored on the next play. Went over the top with 6:22 to go. And all of a sudden, Washington's got the lead. Then there was replay involved in the Michigan drive. It's about 4.5 minutes to go. They're trying to get in here, trying to get a tying score. And on 3rd down, Michigan starts calling Khalil Mulling's number. He's short on his own 35. So now it's 4th down. Michigan on their own 35. They got timeouts. Do they kick it? Do they keep going for it? If they don't get it on their own 35, this thing's a wrap. Well, on 4th down, they go for it. Mullings was the call, but the center had an infraction. He moved the ball. It's a dead play. Do it again, 4th and inches. Then right when they snap the ball, Mullings again, they stop it again for some sort of medical timeout. We weren't clear what that was on the broadcast. Then finally, the next play, Mullings over the top for the 1st down. But then they get a false start, and Michigan goes backward, and then Tuttle's picked off by Cameron Fabiculinen, and that's pretty much it. And then Washington moves forward, runs out the clock. They kick a field goal, so Gross can feel good about making a field goal at the end of the game. Something to remember, kind of get his momentum back. Grady Gross kicks the field goal, and they win by 10 points after Michigan can't do anything with the few seconds they have running out the clock. So we got that going on. Washington wins, big win at home, 27-17. Meanwhile, while that was going on, we had the crazy finish at Minnesota. That's a final. They upset the 11th ranked Trojans. I'm really starting to think and process in my mind right now, who's really moving up to take that next level and compete with the upper echelon of the Big Ten. We got plenty of other games to talk about. We're a little behind schedule because we jammed in 2 games at once here that I wanted to talk about. There were plenty other games going on. If you are new to us while we are live here on Saturday night, I'm going to always ask you to subscribe. We're here every day, Monday through Friday, as well as our live shows on Saturday. Go ahead and subscribe. It's free. And then you're in the loop here. You can follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way you get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. And also invite you to check out our website, talkbig10.com. All of our podcasts, if you're just discovering us, want to see what we're about, they all go there chronologically or by team. And while you're there, you can even buy merchandise, shirts and hats from your favorite team. It is all right there on display for you to buy if you want to check that out as well. All right, the rest of the exciting Week 6 around the Big Ten, that's coming up next. Don't go anywhere. And then the first look in the country at Week 7. All that coming up right here on Locked On Big Ten Live. You know, if you watch games, it's pretty exciting by itself. But then you have the excitement of FanDuel, get a little extra charge. And for you NFL fans out there, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can also check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports book at FanDuel.com. Well, thank everybody for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day. And if you're new here while we're going live on the weekend, that's why we do it. Welcome aboard. But especially you everydayers to check us out. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. And don't forget our website, Talk Big Ten, number 10, talkbig10.com. All right, a lot of other great, interesting games to talk about around the Big Ten. In addition to Washington winning against Michigan and Minnesota upsetting number 11 USC. Other games going on. Ohio State 35-7 over Iowa. If you watched any of our podcasts this past week, and I encourage you to go do it, again, at talkbig10.com, we asked aloud, hey, don't we think that Iowa can just be good enough, tough enough, stingy enough to muck this game up a little bit? And they did. It was 7-0 at the half. And then Ohio State really got it going here with 21 unanswered points in the third quarter to wrap it up. Emeka Egbuka caught 3 touchdown passes, his best game. Jeramiah Smith, the sensational freshman, another crafty one-handed touchdown grab as well. Will Howard had 4 touchdown passes and ran for another. Meanwhile, Cade McNamara for the Hawkeyes, as usual, 98 yards passing, but he threw an interception and he fumbled twice. And the Buckeyes, the interception was Davison Igbinosun. He got the interception there. So Ohio State still rolling. Big game next week. Good job by Ohio State. Now looking ahead to the Oregon games. Same thing for Oregon. Good job not looking ahead. Oregon played on Friday night against Michigan State, won the game 31-10. Again, the best thing for the Ducks is they didn't get caught looking ahead to that Ohio State game, even though Dylan Gabriel had a couple of first half interceptions. Instead, overall, he threw 2 touchdown passes and ran for another. Jordan James rushed for a career high 166 yards and a score. Tez Johnson, 10 more catches, 87 yards. Jordan Birch had 2.5 sacks in this game. Good news for the Spartans, though. They came into this game with 13 turnovers. It's been out of control. Aiden Childs did not throw any interceptions, although he did fumble. So that sets up Oregon, Ohio State. That's the big game next Saturday night. That's the game we're going to go live on here on our big Locked On Big Ten YouTube channel. That's already set in stone. All right. So see you this time next week. And we may have an idea who has an upper leg at possibly winning a Big Ten championship. Penn State's still in the mix. They want to be in that conversation for the Big Ten championship game. They beat UCLA today, 27-11. Another great stripe out atmosphere for a daytime game over there. Drew Aller had 237 yards passing, threw a touchdown and ran for another. No Nick Singleton, running back for the Penn State. Was a surprise absence. James Franklin never really gives updates on injuries unless they're season enders. He didn't have a lot to say, so we don't know. But they still have their secret weapon in Tyler Warren, who caught a touchdown pass in the last minute of the half. Katron Allen, you still got him at the running back. He ran for a touchdown. And Tom Allen's defense each week just seems to tighten the clamps with the defense in the second half of these games. And that was the case against UCLA again. And the score wasn't as close as it appeared because UCLA's Justin Martin, who was in for the injured Ethan Garbers, threw a touchdown pass to Logan Loya for the Bruins. And late in the game, in the last minute, they got the 2-point conversion. So 27-11, that's with 8 points at the very end. By the way, I thought I saw a little something with Justin Martin. Just a little eyeball test stuff. Maybe he's the guy you go with instead of Ethan Garbers. Just throwing that out there. Meanwhile, the Indiana Hoosiers are bowl eligible already. We just started October. That's right. The Hoosiers are 6-0, baby. Their best start since 1967. They beat Northwestern 41-24. Curtis Rourke threw for 380 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Hoosiers also had 158 yards on the ground. Elijah Sarrat had 7 catches for 135 yards. The Hoosiers came into this game with the number 3 offense in the country. And they broke the 40-point barrier again, and they broke the 500-yard barrier again. They've scored 40 or more points in 5 of their 6 games. And they put up the 500 yards with 0 turnovers, far better than last weekend's 4 turnovers, which are the only 4 turnovers they've ever had, and they still won that game easily. They're on a roll right now. Meanwhile, I remember in our pigskin picks yesterday, right here, Nebraska was a 7-point favorite against Rutgers. I said, I think that sounds exactly right, and it was. Nebraska won 14-7 over Rutgers. Didn't think the score would be as such, but it was a 7-point win. Anyway, the weather in this game was brutal. It was a hot, windy day. And by hot and windy, I mean like 97 mile an hour with stiff winds. It was brutal. It was brutal. In the first half, Dante Dowdell and Janaran Bonner each scored 1-yard touchdown runs in the first half for the Huskers to go up 14-0. And then the Huskers just relied on old-fashioned defense in the second half. With 4:08 to go, Rutgers did get a score to make it 14-7. Nebraska's Dylan Raiola had his first subpar game of the year, if you will, 13-27 for 134 yards, all season lows for him. And Ndamukong Suh was there. He was inducted into the Huskers Hall of Fame. He watched the Huskers defense get 4 sacks and hold Rutgers running back Kyle Monangai, who was the leading rusher in the Big Ten last year, held him to just 78 yards and 19 carries. Good job by them. And on the other side, the Knights special teams, they blocked 2 punts on this day. And finally, Wisconsin, a much-needed win. They just beat the rails off of Purdue, 52-6. Now, Braden Locke is in there because Tyler Van Dyke is hurt. He's got experience. You know I like him. He threw for 359 yards, 7th highest total in school history, and 3 touchdowns. And the Badgers scored the game's last 38 points, blowing this open. They scored on 5 straight possessions. Tawi Walker had 19 carries for 94 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Wisconsin beat Purdue for the 18th straight time. Meanwhile, Purdue has lost 4 straight by a combined score 184-44. The Boilers failed to reach the end zone Saturday in a week in which they had fired their offensive coordinator, Graham Harrell. Doesn't sound like anything got fixed. Purdue likes trains. The train's off the track in West Lafayette. Wisconsin running back Ches Malusi from Naples. He left the team this week. He's trying to get healthy. Will Pauling, Bryson Green, and Tyrell Henry all went down with lower body injuries in the first half. So Wisconsin is really banged up. So there you have it. What a huge day around the Big Ten. Oregon and Ohio State still hanging in there. Penn State still hanging in there. Indiana making a run. The Gophers upset the Trojans. And Washington with a statement win over Michigan in front of their home fans, 10-point win. What a day. I'm going to hit up on some of your comments, as a matter of fact, in just a minute. Those of you watching live here tonight. And we'll have our first look at Week 7. If you can believe it, it's Week 7 next week. Obviously, it's highlighted by the Ohio State-Oregon game, but we got a lot to talk about. It's all 1 minute right here on Locked On Big Ten. I want to talk about Game Time. If you want to go to any of these games, get the Game Time app on your phone or whatever device you like to use and get tickets to anything. Big Ten games, Major League Baseball playoff, NFL game, all right there. Concerts, comedy shows, Game Time. Get the Game Time app. They've got all-in pricing, so there's no tricks or surprises with pricing. They show you the view of the seat of the ticket you're about to buy right there on your phone before you hit enter and buy everything. It is fantastic. Absolutely love it. They have their lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's before we take a look at the upcoming Week 7 action, a lot of comments here as we're live here on Saturday night, Sunday morning. Thanks for checking us out. Let's see, got a lot of them. We'll start it off early on. Was a hashtag Go Blue. I'm glad you're still enthusiastic about that. Some Go Big Red out there as well. Joshua, Michigan has 3 second-string quarterbacks, can't get out of its own way. There's an argument to be had there. Meanwhile, the Huskers from Mike, good job, 5-1. Also, Mike said this is the craziest day in college football. It was. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt for one. It was a crazy day, no question. Penn State Jim says Michigan's quarterback situation is rough. Yes, it is. Also, in my opinion, USC definitely underdogs versus Penn State next Saturday at the Coliseum. Yeah, I think you're right. Some dude says USC, welcome to the Big Ten. Yeah, there's some of that. Meanwhile, let's see here. John checking in. I went to the Indiana versus Maryland game last week. I am going to the Indiana versus Nebraska game next. I think that's in a couple weeks, right? Indiana's going to bye. That's going to be a big game. That's going to be a huge game. Donnie checking in. Great job, Craig. Awesome. He says, who is Larry Bird? Hoosier football is for real. It absolutely is. John also saying Rourke is an accurate passer, also very cool under pressure for the Hoosiers. He is. There's no question about that. Meanwhile, thanks for all the live comments. I was just kind of streaming through some of them. You can always hit us up on comments on YouTube any day of the week, all the time. We'll try to get in there and answer those as best we can. All right, let's check it out. We've got coming up week 7. It starts Friday night with Northwestern at Maryland. That's the 8:00 game on Fox, 8:00 Eastern. Saturday's huge day. We've been circling this day on the calendar for a long time. Washington coming off their big win now. They're in the mix. They're going to Iowa. That's pretty good. That'll be a noon game. I saw a line before the game started today that Iowa was an early 3.5-point favorite. I'm going to be curious to see if that shrinks now or even changes after Washington's win here this weekend. Wisconsin, they go to Rutgers. That's a noon game. Wisconsin flying high off of their win. Rutgers, tough loss today. But we got a battle of ranked teams now. At least I think they're going to be ranked when the ratings come out. Number 7, Penn State. Number 11, USC. USC is clearly going to fall from that number 11 spot. That is the 3:30 CBS game, Eastern time. Purdue is at Illinois. Number 24, Illinois. The big one. We've got number 3, Ohio State versus number 6, Oregon. I'll be curious to see if Oregon moves up to number 5, maybe. Well, there's going to be some movement, obviously, with Alabama losing, right? So this is likely going to be a top 5 matchup of Ohio State may move up to 2, and Oregon will probably be 5th, my guess right now. So 2 top 5 teams, Big Ten teams, possibly future Big Ten championship game teams. 7:30 Eastern, live NBC Big Saturday night, and we're going to go live here on our Locked On Big Ten YouTube channel as soon as that game is over next week. And Minnesota, flying high after the win over Southern Cal. They got a 9:00 Eastern, 6:00 Pacific game at UCLA. We'll see if they can make it a California team sweep. PJ Fleck, that was a big win for him. He really, really needed that. Hey, thank you for checking us out live on a Saturday night, Sunday morning. This is always fun. And what a night, what a day, what a weekend. And it's only going to get better with the schedule next week. All right. So many ways for you to interact here. Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter at TalkBig10. Subscribe on YouTube. Don't forget our website, talkbig10.com. But if you subscribe and follow and share this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, you'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. That'll do it. Don't forget to catch us 6 a.m. Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific, every day. Video and audio versions of our podcast come out each and every day. Tell your friends about us. Thanks for spending some time with us. I can't wait to talk to you next time when we get the week started on Monday. It's going to be a huge week around the Big Ten. For Locked On Big Ten Live, I'm Craig Sheeman. Talk to you next time.